The 100 Black Men of Greater Mobile Incorporated has been dedicated and committed to providing mentoring and educational programs for students in the Mobile and surrounding communities. The organization works with students to instill values and prepare them to become college and career ready. For more than a decade, the 100 has implemented a rigorous approach to help students through their Essential Skills program that provides life-changing influence on the participants that will lead them to a successful path into the future. The curriculum this year focused on goal setting, personal values, college and career preparedness, resume writing, and job shadowing, just to name a few. This constant interaction with their mentors and classroom instructors has established confidence in these students as they prepare for their next journey in life. The program draws on the entire community's resources to foster the youth's achievement potential. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, the members of the 100 went beyond the classroom by offering etiquette and fine dining experiences, helping students with personal development and showing students how to carry themselves in a professional manner regardless of setting. Despite the pandemic, the organization utilized video technology and other tools to communicate and stay connected with students, parents, and the entire community with updates concerning health and wellness and other vital issues. With the success of these initiatives, students now understand the importance of great education and the opportunities that are in front of them. The goal of the 100 is to train, tutor, mentor, and encourage students to always do their best. Throughout 2020 and 2021, the Saturday Academy continued to grow with online participation. Subjects included bullying, making the grade, decision-making, and discipline and destiny. We are extremely proud of all of our students involved and commend their parents for their extra push. The desire of the 100 is to live up to their mission by mentoring across a lifetime. Over the past 7 years on the campus of the University of South Alabama and 3 years at Bishop State Community College, their influence has reached the students through the Collegiate 100 chapter. The men of the 100 are matched with these young men based upon their career aspirations. This interaction allows for a new sense of engagement, wisdom, and decision-making skills dealing with their college education, career, and life. These impressive young men have already established a mark in the community as leaders. We are proud of these young men and look forward to their leadership and commitment to serve others. For the past several years, the 100 has partnered with the City of Mobile to facilitate the Youth Empowered for Success, known as the YES program, Summer Youth Job Skills Training Program for students age 14 and above. This free 3-week skills training focuses on many aspects of the Essential Skills program to prepare the youth for upcoming employment opportunities. This initiative equips young people with critical problem-solving skills with hopes of curbing youth violence in the City of Mobile.
Welcome to a Convo with the 100, sponsored by the Morehouse School of Medicine and the National COVID Resiliency Network. Here's the president of the 100 Black Men of Greater Mobile, Dr. Andre Green.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kelly Finley, filling in. The top portion of this virtual chat, but of course, we're so very thankful for all that Dr. Andre Green does for our community. I am moderating this evening, this virtual town hall meeting. We're continuing the conversation, the impact of COVID on education. If you've joined us before, thanks for coming back. And if this is your first time, well, you are in for a treat because you're hearing directly from medical professionals, from educators, and the superintendent of the Mobile County Public School System. We've broken up the segments in 3 segments, but we need to hear from you. We're asking you to post your questions. We'll continue to mention our sponsors because we're so grateful to have them support us as we continue a very vibrant and vital conversation. We're going to bring our first panel on, and as they get in place, I am going to remind you that we are on Facebook and we are on YouTube, and if you've got questions, go ahead and post them and I'll ask them for you. And we're excited. We're excited to have you, and we're excited to continue this conversation. We know that COVID-19 is still very much in the conversation. This is a pandemic, and a new variant has just been spotted and reported in Mobile County, according to the Mobile County Health Department. And we'll talk more about that. We're going to also talk about ways in which we can help your children, ways we can help educators, ways that we can support our community and continue to move forward. Also, there's a scholarship opportunity coming up. Deadline is fast approaching. April 1st. It is not a joke, even though that is April Fool's. There's the information on the screen. If you have a young person in your home, you would be remiss if you did not share this information with them. We'll continue throughout this conversation to remind you about that. That opportunity is open for Mobile County Public Schools students and Saturday Academy mentees. Okay, so you are here. We are thankful. Let's get the conversation going. And again, thank you to the National Institutes of Health, the Morehouse School of Medicine, and of course, this conversation is hosted by the 100 Black Men of Greater Mobile. There's one of our panel members. Good evening. I'm going to ask everyone to unmute themselves, please, once you get on screen. We have lots to talk about. All of you are experts in your field, and you've been so gracious to donate your time this evening to help us to better understand COVID and its impact on education. As I'll do this evening throughout all of our panels, I'll have you introduce yourself, quick introduction, and we'll get right to the conversation at hand. Let's start with Dr. Krista.
Hello, my name is Krista Mahari. I'm an assistant professor of psychology at University of South Alabama. My research is in youth violence prevention, and I'm a clinical child and adolescent psychologist by training. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. We're so happy to have you. Dr. Carey.
Hi, I'm Dr. Carey McDade Hancock. I'm a pediatrician at Franklin Primary Health. I've been here for almost 11 years now. I have been native of Mobile pretty much all my life, and have been a product of Mobile County Public School System, before high school, Spring Hill College, and really am very glad to be here.
We're so happy to have you, Dr. Carey. Thank you. Commander Curtis.
Yes, I'm also happy to be here. My name is Curtis Graves. I'm the commander for the Office of Strategic Initiatives, Mobile PD, where my focus is prevention and intervention strategies. Thank
you for joining us and bringing your experience into the conversation. It's oh so vital right about now. Let's start with Dr. Carey. Let's talk about mental health and ADHD and anxiety and depression, things that we're hearing more about as we're very much still in this pandemic.
Yes, definitely. As we've known, we've had so many to be affected by COVID-19 during this pandemic. We've had millions and millions of children to actually be affected by this. Unfortunately, when we had school closed, we've had a lot of children that could not adapt to being at home. For some children that had ADHD, they actually had a better impact on their education because they had their one-on-one at home with their parents. But along with that, a lot of those children will also have problems with anxiety and depression. And so those coupled together have created a poor environment for them to be able to learn and to adjust to what's going on in their environment. COVID-19 itself has actually caused effects on children as well. In the sense, they're causing brain fog, they're causing problems with their attention span. So they're starting to look more like ADHD children. So what I usually encourage parents to do is if you're seeing problems with your child, if their attention or if their focus, talk to your pediatrician. Don't just write it off as though, oh, they're just not trying their hardest. Literally, try to talk to the pediatrician and find out what's going on, because there are things we may be able to do to try to help them through this.
And you have shared that the pediatrician, age-wise, some parents are a little surprised at how long their children can see a pediatrician like you.
So yeah, so according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, we actually will see children. We can see children up to their 18th or to their 19th birthday, excuse me. And some will even go beyond that, just depending on if they've got underlying medical conditions, if they've got long-term problems that they were born with, things that were causing them to have mental issues. They can be seen by their pediatrician even up to age 21 at that point. It's really up to the comfort of the patient and the doctor, how long that they choose to stay with their pediatrician.
And sticking with that mental health conversation, Dr. Krista, adolescent mental health, gun violence, and this trauma that our young people are seeing during this pandemic. Bring us up to speed on that portion of the conversation.
So we are seeing really high rates of youth violence, higher than really has been seen since the early 90s, which was a pretty high for us nationally. And we've seen that ourselves in Mobile with the recent shootings that, of course, Commander Graves could talk more about. And when this is usually happening is when youth are feeling disconnected from a lot of things. Maybe they're feeling disconnected from normal social institutions like schools and community centers. And there's increased national tension, there's increased global tension, and the COVID pandemic has just accelerated everything. So and it's not just violence, we're also seeing very strong increases in suicide, especially in African American youth, which historically has been relatively low compared to white youth. We're also seeing, as mentioned, higher rates of depression and anxiety, higher rates of drug overdoses, even higher rates of things like car accidents. And it can all be related to these high degrees of stress that we're seeing nationally.
We have more grandparents raising their grandchildren and younger parents. If they're watching right now, what do you say to them? If they're seeing that trauma, if they're surrounded by that trauma, how can we help them?
I think the biggest thing is talk to your teen, talk to your child, ask them how they're doing. If you are seeing warning signs like mood or personality changes or withdrawal or anger outbursts or changes in behavior that you hadn't noticed before, impulsivity, so kind of doing things without thinking it through. If you're seeing those things, stop your child, ask them how they are. Spend time with them, build that communication. And honestly, sometimes we just need to ask our children, are you thinking about hurting yourself? And that in and of itself creates an opening for those conversations to happen.
And I think it's really a good point to point out that since we're on social media right now, seeing what they're doing on social media.
Yes, that is major. I think a lot of the times parents want to respect the privacy of their children, and there's always developmentally appropriate privacy for your children, but you should know what apps your children are on, and you should know who they're communicating with. And a lot of times we can see violent events escalate online. We can also see sometimes when youth are making suicidal statements, they're making those online first. And sometimes they're just engaging in other risky behavior online. So friend your child, follow your child, know what your child is doing online.
Yeah, because they don't have a choice. If they're not paying bills, especially, we're friends. Great advice indeed. Commander Curtis, you talk about the importance of, yes, healthy breakfasts are good, but it's so much more than that. And the holistic approach that we need to use when we're talking to our children and helping them through what they're having to go through, because this generation, they have it tough. I mean, they're in the middle of a pandemic.
Absolutely. I think we tend not to really think about all the variables that come into play when our youth are subjected to so many different things in society. And we always talk about the need for breakfast, but we don't talk about the need for mental health or mental wellness, understanding that there are so many complexities going on inside the home as well as outside the home. I tend to pay attention to the social ecological model, where it talks about the individual experience and then the community experience and so on, the society or societal experience. And it's so important to capture the problem before it actually gets outside of the home. Violence in and of itself is very much like a disease. And I think that we don't realize sometimes that in order to eliminate or to mitigate it, we have to address it at its source. And sometimes it's at home, sometimes it's at the school. But the last thing we want is for it to happen in our communities or in society at large. By that time, it's everywhere and it can't be contained. So we have to look at it from that mindset. We have to look at it as being literally a pandemic. We talk about COVID. Well, violence is also a pandemic.
That's a great point. And I know when we spoke earlier, domestic violence is something, there's an uptick that we're not just seeing citywide or nationally, but I mean, people are stressed, and that's not making an excuse, but there's more stress, there's more trauma that we continue to press upon. Some of the symptoms of domestic violence that could be happening at the home, and children may not say what's happening. Commander, you said that there are symptoms that teachers and maybe the front office can look for, and when they know to step up and help out this child.
Right. I tend to give examples a lot. One of the examples I use quite a bit is that of a child who is living in a home where he or she is exposed to domestic violence. And let's say, for example, that they witnessed their mother being battered by her boyfriend. The police arrive to their home and the police write a report, mom's injured, and the grandmother picks up the child and takes the child to her home. And the child stays overnight at grandmother's house. She gives him or her their breakfast, and they head on to school. But this incident that occurred at home may have happened in the wee hours of the morning or late at night. So this child is more than likely not very attentive in school, because you have to be open for learning. And if you're not open for learning, then there's not much productivity in the classroom. So let's say that this child is now sleepy and this child is sitting on his or laying his head on the desk, or she's laying her head on her desk, and the teacher pays attention to it, and the teacher gets upset about it. The teacher gets irate, and the teacher actually calls the child out, and the child responds negatively to the teacher. And what happens from there is the child goes to the office for a disorderly conduct complaint, and then the child actually gets arrested. But the person who comes in to arrest the child is the officer that came to the home. And the officer never saw the child, and the child saw the officer, but the officer never saw the child. So it's so important for us to see people where they are. And it's so important for us to come up with new strategies to address these situations. And I think that a lot of agencies, to include ours, we're trying to make those steps, trying to make those connections so that we can holistically address these situations that we see so often, but we don't take time out to figure out, how do we connect the dots? How do we collaborate better? How do we have more of a collective impact as a community, as law enforcement working with our schools, and our schools working with law enforcement, and our health agencies working with the schools and law enforcement?
Proactive is the name of the game, and vice reactive. All three of us were nodding as you're speaking. Krista, what do you want to add?
I think I just really want to emphasize everything that Commander Graves was saying. A lot of times with children, if they're engaging in disruptive behaviors, it's easy for us as adults to get frustrated with them, and shifting that mindset from what's wrong with you to what happened to you and how can I help you is going to be really, really key to make sure that we all get through this pandemic okay.
I love that. Thanks, Dr. Krista. Dr. Carey, what about you? You're nodding as well. I know you've shared that you're a proud parent. And I know as a fellow parent, when we hear about these things, you put your children in that position and think, what would I do? How could I help? Does that sound about right?
Definitely. And what I typically tell my families is whatever we do is always going to be a team effort. Just like the commander said, it is literally, we've got your healthcare team, we've got your home team, if you've got a local church that you're attending, it's a team effort. The old adage is it takes a village to raise a child. We do what we can to try to protect our children. Even as far as, we've got the vaccine that's now available. Whatever we can do to try to protect our children, we do what we can. And we want to make sure that we do it in the best way possible.
Let me ask all three of you this, and anyone can jump in. Confidentiality, it's a big deal. From a medical standpoint, we've heard the word HIPAA, but some children don't feel safe, in the educational environments saying what's wrong or what's going on, as we're very much, when it comes to our resources, stretched thin with providing them with a listening ear. What do you tell them?
I do think, I think many of us are mandated reporters, which means that if we hear that a child is in danger, we are legally and ethically required to do something about it. And so usually when I'm in that situation with children where they might not want to tell me something because they're worried, maybe that means they're going to be removed from their home, or maybe that means a loved one will get in trouble, that like we all want what's best for them. And our main priority is to make sure that they are safe. And when we're thinking about families, sometimes families just need more support to help that child be safe. And that it's a partnership and a collaborative effort rather than us versus somebody else.
Right, because it takes a village. It truly does. I've got a question here. Let me go ahead and pull it up. And I'm encouraging everyone to please post your question, like Jillian L. Bowers. She says, the pandemic has impacted all of us mentally to a certain extent, some more than others. As a community, how do we equip the adults, our parents, to make sure they are well enough to help the young people? It needs to be a collective effort, inclusive of various sectors of the community. Jillian, thank you. She posted that question on Facebook.
I would say this more than anything, we have to come up with new strategies to communicate with one another. The pandemic brought about changes in every agency in our country as it relates to how do we communicate. We saw all the gaps in communication and how we deliver services. We have to learn from those challenges, and I think we have. And I think as we talk about how do we actually equip parents with information, well, we go directly to them. We find out from them what they need, but we go to them and we create dialogue, we create relationships, we reinstitute what we call community and what that looks like among practitioners, whether it's teachers, law enforcement, the entire community coming together and actually having honest dialogue to address so many important issues that COVID has actually manifest or has exposed to us. Because across the country, we're seeing the same thing. We're seeing increase in violence, whether it's a small town, it could be Mayberry, or it can be New York. We're seeing the same instances. We're seeing the same issues. That's not by chance. That speaks to a greater problem, but it also calls on us to come up with new strategies to address those problems.
What's very interesting is that, once the mask mandate was dropped and you were able to see people's faces, it's like a whole new world. And you didn't realize from a mental standpoint how much that impacted people who need to be seen or to see others. Have you had feedback on items like that?
I think that I feel like a lot of adolescents have felt lost in this process. So some students who their junior year, their senior year of high school, they were never in person. And so they haven't done all the traditional things like going to prom or sitting down necessarily with a counselor to figure out what they wanted their next steps to be. And so I think there has been this increase in social isolation that's happened, this increase in feeling disconnected that has happened, that's made a lot of people feel lost. And I think part of what you're saying is that we just want to see each other, recognize that we are here, that we can be neighbors, that we can be community for each other, let each other know that we see you, and that we will work together to try to make things better for everyone.
I love that. Last question, because I know the next panel is coming on. When we think about our adolescents and all that they see and all that they go through, sometimes they're not the most affected. It's the classmate who loves them or their buddy who cares about them. How do we surround them with love and support and help them to understand that it's okay?
I think I think direct communication is always perfect. So saying like, I care about you, you are important. I think a lot of times there are some adolescents who kind of take the world on their shoulders. And so letting there be an adult who's carrying that burden with them so that the adolescent does not feel like they have to carry everything by themselves, and providing resources. So some people need really intensive resources like psychotherapy. And so letting that be a part of the conversation, letting it be normal, taking away all of the stigma that might be around that, but recognizing that we all need a little more support sometimes. And sometimes what we need is just like an adult to give us attention for 10 minutes a day. And that's all we need. And it could be playing a card game or going for a walk or playing basketball. But showing with your time, with your words, that this person is important and that they matter is really, really key to wellness.
It sounds so simple and it can make a huge difference. Before I let all of you go real fast, if you could please give me one website you want parents and grandparents and educators to know about so they can get more information. Commander Curtis, I'll start with you.
I would say go to projectthrive.org. There you should find quite a bit of information that talks to all the different resources we have in our community. It talks about trauma and those things that you can do to address or try to mitigate those concerns that you may have relative to your family.
Thank you. Dr. Carey.
All right. My one website would be healthychildren.org. It lists a lot of information for parents just to talk about different medical conditions in general. But there's a long list of things related to COVID-19. So if you have questions about seeing children who are having kind of long haul symptoms, if you're concerned about help with other mental health conditions and whatnot, it gives a lot of resources as to what to do, how to recognize those symptoms, how to approach your child, how to really help them the best.
Great stuff. And both websites have been popped up on the screen for those watching. And Dr. Krista.
I will give the suicide prevention lifeline. So that's 1-800-273-TALK or 1-800-273-8255. You can also go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org, and they can also connect you to other mental health services in the area.
All three of you, thank you so very much. We appreciate you. We're going to go ahead and take a quick 60-second break and then be back with the next group.
Hi, I'm Walt Kirkman with the 100 Black Men of America. We send greetings to you. Today, we're launching the Healthcare 2.0. It's very, very important to monitor your health. Why is that important? With the advent of COVID-19, we're having a lot of health disparities in Black America. If you go to 100blackmen.org, that's 100blackmen.org, and you select Healthcare 2.0, we'd like you to register with this thing called MimiRx. MimiRx is a health persistent monitoring software to monitor what you measure. Now, what I have in my hands here is a thermometer, and this takes your temperature. Obviously, if you're above 100 degrees, that is a bad situation. You probably have a temperature or COVID. Here is a pulse ox. What is a pulse ox? This monitors the efficiencies of your lung. If your number is below 90, that means you may have pneumonia or COVID-19. So we suggest you monitor yourself every day with this pulse ox. You can buy any of these devices on Amazon or iHealth.com. And then here, this is a blood cuff device that measures your blood pressure. High blood pressure has really been an issue with Black Americans. Pre-hypertension, which is above 140 or 150 on the top number and 90 on the bottom number, you may have high blood pressure, which could lead to a lot of issues. So make sure you monitor your blood pressure and stay below, if you can, 130. As you get older, your blood pressure is going to rise based on aging points. The other thing that's important with the 100 Black Men, we want to tell you, exercise 3 times a week, at least 20 minutes a day. That's stretching first, that's running a mile, 2 miles, interval training, swimming, jogging, even doing some gardening is real important to get that blood pumping. So we have a saying at the 100 Black Men of America, what you see is what you be. Again, go to 100blackmen.org for more information and get out there and exercise.
Good evening. I'm Kelly Finley. I get to moderate the virtual town hall meeting this evening, the impact of COVID on education. Our first panel, thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Carrie McDade-Hancock, Dr. Krista Mahari, and Commander Curtis Graves. We talked about the impact of COVID from an educational standpoint, including gun violence and mental health. We gave you important websites that you can follow up if you'd like more information. We talked about the symptoms that you need to look for if your special child in your life is going through some things, but they're not quite the talker, if you know what I mean. So we're continuing the conversation now. We've got another great panel ready to share their expertise with you and tell you more about how we can help our young people as we navigate our way through this pandemic, because we're very much still in the pandemic. Now, this evening, our town hall meeting is hosted, of course, by the 100 Black Men of Greater Mobile Incorporated and made possible by a Healthcare 2.0 grant from the National Institutes of Health and the Morehouse School of Medicine. We're so very thankful for their support. We also want to remind you that we're going to be talking about a scholarship opportunity a little bit later and throughout this conversation. So if you have a high schooler that is wanting to continue on, this is a great opportunity. There's a link on your screen right there. Also, we're going to have a survey opportunity for you to let us know what we can do better or what you'd like to see as we continue to do our part. There's a QR code right there. We continue to do our part to inform you with educational information from the medical experts and the educators that are on the front lines with your children. My next panel, they are coming on board, excited to continue the conversation. Good evening, ladies. As I did with the first panel, I'm going to have you introduce yourself quickly, and then we're going to get to the conversation at hand, all things COVID on education. I'll start with my screen bottom left with Katrina Ken. Good evening.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to be here this evening. I am Katrina Ken. I am a retired principal with the Mobile County Public School System. I am currently serving as an educational specialist with the 100 Black Men of Greater Mobile. I am also a learning support specialist with the Scholastic Corporation.
Thank you for joining us. So excited to hear more from you this evening. Dr. Monica.
Good evening. It's an honor to be here today. My name is Monica Motley. I am the coordinator of transformational improvement for Mobile County Public Schools and also serve as the director of guidance and counseling. So I have the honor and privilege of working with our priority schools in the district, as well as working with 120 of our school counselors in the district.
We're grateful that you have donated your time this evening to help us better understand COVID education and how the two meet up. Ms. Patrice, you are up next, ma'am.
Thank you. Good evening. It's certainly a pleasure for me to be here and be a part of this esteemed panel. My name is Patrice Davis, and I'm the intervention supervisor with the Baldwin County Public School System. Although I have a myriad of roles that I play as the supervisor, specifically for tonight, our focus is me serving as supervisor of our counselors and school social workers.
We're so thankful that you wear so many hats, and those hats can help us when we come to this conversation. So many grandparents and parents and children watching and wondering, and they've got questions. There's a ticker at the bottom of the screen. If you have a question, it will pop up there, and I'll ask our illustrious panel. Ms. Patrice, let's start with you. I know we spoke earlier, and you mentioned Suicidal Awareness Month. Some people may not be aware that even exists, and the amount of resources that are there for their young people. If you would please help us understand.
Yes, the month of September is deemed as Suicide Awareness Prevention Month. And during that particular month in the Baldwin County Public School System, we strive to bring a lot of focus on suicide. Many times people tend to think if you bring this subject up that it's going to plant a seed in children's mind, and that's actually quite the opposite. We want to have students to be able to talk with us about what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they're going through, what their issues may be. And during that time, we're trying to provide them resources to help them know how they can cope and deal with whatever it is that they may be going through. We have had a suicide awareness activity previously in the year where we talked about shattering the silence and letting people know that it's okay to talk about suicide. It's okay to discuss your thoughts and feelings. We even had a guest speaker there in Baldwin County who lost her daughter to suicide. And by showing that this can affect everyone, regardless of your socioeconomic status, your race, your gender, I think that it has made a tremendous difference in opening up the dialogue for people to feel free to talk with us about their feelings.
What do you want our parents who are watching, what do you want them to know about social workers and the type of training that they have to go through and the type of resources? And if you could please mention some of those resources.
Absolutely. I think one of the first things is that sometimes people may not realize that we do employ school social workers. And in the Baldwin County Public School System, we're extremely fortunate to have 14 of these social workers. Some of them are based strictly at our high schools, and others of them serve a multitude of our elementary schools. Sometimes people think of social workers as the people who are going to come and take their children away from the home. And that is certainly not the case with our social workers in the system. Their purpose is to serve as a link between the school and the home and the community. So they have a multitude of resources that they can share with families if they are in need. For instance, if a family is struggling with housing, those social workers can help them with that. They know of places where they can go to provide assistance for them. If they need food, if they need help paying their bills, if they need clothing assistance for students that may need to wear school uniforms, they have a resource list that is available that they can pull from and connect those families with these agencies in the community so that they do not have to suffer in silence.
And that is why we had to have you as part of this conversation. You're representing the Baldwin County side of the house because the care is there, the resources are there. We just want to make sure people know about it. And that is the purpose of this panel. Let's bring it across the bay to Mobile. Katrina Ken, you are a retired principal and an educational specialist. Socio-emotional, that is a power word for you. Why so?
That is a power word because we know that there's a need now for us to deploy some socio-emotional learning strategies for our students. We have seen students who have had mental health issues, and these mental health issues became exacerbated even more so because of COVID. And so because of students going through so much because of the impact of COVID, mental health, which they had attendance issues, safety issues in the home. We're dealing with homeless students. Poverty levels are at an all-time high. Students are having issues in the community, as your previous panel just addressed with gun violence. So our students are coming to school bearing the weight of all of these socio-emotional issues. So it is incumbent upon us as educators to provide some tools in our toolkit that will address these socio-emotional issues, because if we don't clear the socio-emotional issues, we cannot get to the business of academics. So then we start to look at our toolkit of interventions, utilizing our school counselors, as Ms. Patrice Davis just indicated, using our school social workers, our school resource officers, and even down to the classroom level of teachers having those strategies for trauma-informed situations in their classrooms. We have calming corners where we send students when they're having a meltdown. So it's important, and it is a powerful word in education right now. It's a powerful word to me.
And you say, teacher training in the building with family. How can that help better this situation where we all grow from what's going on?
We definitely need the family engagement. We cannot do this without having the wraparound support of the family and the community. So when you are, training teachers, it's important that we inform our parents and our families of the supports that's going on in the school so that they can replicate these supports back at the home so that they can work with their students in a way that exudes more positivity and in a way that they're going to be able to send their students to school better prepared for learning. So we want the parents and the families and the communities, we want them on board as well, because schools cannot do this alone. This is a multifaceted operation where we need everybody working hand in hand.
That collaboration is so important, and I know you mentioned the classroom-based support, community collaboration, and that I mean, you just hit that target because we get it. We understand that when you break it down like that, it makes perfect sense, and just saying it is helpful. We do want to welcome our friends who are online from watching on YouTube and Facebook. Don't forget to post your question for our panel. Dr. Monica, let's talk about those school counselors that we've already mentioned, and what should a child do if they're going through something in the classroom or at home? What steps do you recommend that they do to help get help?
Yes, our school counselors are there to support our students that are dealing with any barriers that may be hindering them from achieving their full potential. And so our school counselors actually at the beginning of the year, they introduce and go around to all the classes and to their students to let them know the process they have for connecting with them. Some school counselors, for the older students, for example, they even have QR codes where they can just use their phone and then they can just put in their requests to see the school counselor. For our younger students, sometimes they can just go directly to the school counselor's office by asking their teacher to go there. So there's a variety of ways that our school counselors are there to help their students, but making sure they're accessible. They want to be accessible to all of our students. So they're there to help if there are any barriers that are hindering a child from achieving their full potential. This could be academic, it could be social emotional issues. That's what they're there for, and they're willing to help.
When you talk about intervention and strategies within the district, I mean, you're in a very large district. Where do you begin?
Well, it's a team effort. We always say team MCPSS, and we're sad that Mrs. Ken is not there with us because she was definitely a key part of that team. And so it's working together in all areas and making sure that we take a multi-tiered system of support that we use for our students. And basically, it's being proactive. And so we work as far as the academic interventions that we have district-wide initiatives. So no matter what school you're in, you have an opportunity to participate in those interventions. We have interventions that are specific to the needs of the school. So there are enrichment activities and there are interventions that are designed to meet the needs of the students in that particular community. So we do have district-wide initiatives that we have, so across the board that all students have access to. And then there are individual enrichment and intervention activities that the school has that's designed specifically to meet the needs of those students.
Lots of great resources. And again, the point of this panel is to arm everyone with this information and let them know that help is there, that love is there. If you would please share some of the feedback that you've heard from parents or grandparents or even fellow educators who are very much in this pandemic right along with you on the front lines.
Yes, just thinking about, I had the opportunity actually at the beginning of the pandemic and when we were all trying to scramble and see what are we going to do to help our students. I actually worked our hotline that we had in the district. We had a hotline where parents, students could call in and we could provide assistance for them. And so, of course, the needs were immediate as far as how do you help, trying to figure out how to help their child academically, just from small things that's the connecting with their classes to the larger scale issues of even dealing with food and housing insecurity. And so you've seen that transition to still trying to help their child to be engaged and looking at resources that are available to help their students. And so many times, still, even though we don't have that particular hotline, but still hearing about the ways that we can support the students with the coping strategies that they need to help them to be successful.
And I'm glad you mentioned that hotline. What's a way that the community can reach out, and not just about, what's wrong, but what's right? Because there are many who are very thankful for the support that they are experiencing now that their kids are back in the classroom. Do you have a website or a phone number that you want them to have so that they can continue this conversation that we're having this evening? All three of you, questions for you.
Yes, absolutely. The Baldwin County Public School System maintains a Facebook page as well as an Instagram page. So certainly social media is very prominent, and we encourage our parents to reach out to us via social media to not just share things that they may not like, but to specifically highlight and pinpoint some of those things that they're very proud of, and they're very glad to have their students be a part of our school system. There are also sometimes individual schools will have Facebook pages, and they will post information about various events that are going on their school campuses, reminders of things that are coming up, something as simple as when report cards are going to go out, when progress reports are going to be sent out, so that parents are kept in the loop and are mindful of what's taking place. As we're getting ready for graduation, all things relative to seniors and what they need to know to be in preparation for graduation is being posted. So we encourage our families to review those various schools' websites and Facebook pages for all of that pertinent information that is shared.
Now, Ms. Patrice, the kids are like, why did you have to tell them about the progress reports?
And Kelly, I'm sorry, I just wanted to add, and the same is true for Mobile County Public Schools. And Dr. Motley can attest to this. There is a active website, www.mcpss.com, for parents and any community individuals to log on and go on and see the interventions and the resources and what's being offered to offset even some of the learning loss that has been experienced due to COVID-19. There's going to be a summer literacy camp that's coming up in the district. So this will be available to, help our students who missed that 1.5 years of face-to-face instruction. This will be available to, help them to close some of those gaps. So there's a plethora of resources available. I just want to drop the Lifelines Counseling Center. And that's a number where parents can always call for some interventions or some help, especially with mental health. And that number is 251-602-0909. And those are just some of the avenues that parents and community leaders can help or can find more information about.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you mentioned that. And there's the number right there on the screen.
Yes, Lifelines is a wonderful organization and providing resources. If parents need resources to find resources in the community, they can access it even by going on the website at lifelinesmobile.org. And I would encourage parents to just go to and find out what's happening at their local school. For example, we do have those enrichment activities that are happening at the school. So where they're not just regular, ordinary tutoring programs. There are programs that have activities that the students enjoy, whether it's stepping, dancing, cheerleading, volleyball. Even at the high school level, they have cosmetology. They really have gotten into designing programs that we want kids to be engaged and to enjoy and love learning, and to still help them support that learning loss that's happened.
And I think there's so many parents and grandparents who they're a little frustrated with kids being home all the time and having to be the teacher, that they appreciate the real teacher so much that they'll want to support. And knowing about these programs will make a difference for all the children involved, not just the one either you birthed or you adopted or that you gained. All right, we've got another question for you. Jillian Bowers back again. Question number 2. Love her and love the fact that she's so engaged in the community as well. Okay, she says teachers and counselors already have so many expectations placed on them in addition to teaching the curriculum and testing. Are there opportunities to partner with healthcare systems to have behavioral specialists available to students at all schools to address these socio-emotional issues?
Yes. We don't necessarily call them behavioral specialists in Baldwin County, but we do have a phenomenal partnership with Alta Point Health Services. And as a result of that partnership, they are able to provide school-based mental health counselors that come into each of our 46 schools and will work with the students. We would love to have them there every day, but certainly we are very appreciative for the time that they are able to offer our students. And so they serve a multitude of schools, and so they have a rotating schedule, but they come in and they have been referred to those individuals by the school counselors or school social workers, or sometimes the parents themselves. And they're able to meet with these individuals on the school campus to have another person with whom they can talk, with whom they can share some of their thoughts and concerns in a confidential manner, so that some of that burden and responsibility of the students is removed from our counselors and our school social workers.
I know Baldwin County families are very thankful to just hear that. They may not know, and now they do know. You know, this is like the evening of the twins, triplets. Jessica, Miss Jessica Reed. She says, I would love to see a socio-emotional camp for our kids offered in the summer as well. That's a great idea.
That's happening. That our summer school and our opportunities that we have with the summer literacy, here again, it's not just strictly just academics, but we really are infusing some more of the social emotional supports there. And so that will include the arts that are available for the students. So that's a part of what they're doing this summer too as well for enrichment.
And just to add to that, with this socio-emotional for the children, it's being incorporated during the school day, where there are certain socio-emotional rooms where children can, hibernate to and have some cool down time, or just some time to relax and kind of get away from, all of, the stress and strain. Those are becoming more and more prevalent in our schools, and not just for students. Also, there have been some therapy rooms and socio-emotional rooms for teachers as well. So everything is being done at the school building level to address socio-emotional concerns, as Ms. Davis mentioned, through the Alta Point therapists. The school-based therapists are very instrumental in working with children that need that additional level of support past the school guidance counselor. They're there on site, and it's so easy to work with them. Also, a partnership with the University of South Alabama, being a trauma-informed school, which my former school still is a trauma-informed school, where teachers are being trained on adverse childhood experiences that students may encounter. So they'll know how to approach children differently before they ask, what's wrong with you? Let me see what I can do to assist you and help you.
And having that background on that child makes all the difference in the world. And this child feels like they matter and that they're in a trusted space, because even though kids ask for all types of things, in reality, feeling safe is number one. That's the priority. Okay, so as we wrap up, ladies, I'm going to ask you round robin real quickly. In a few words, tell me the best part of your job.
Students, children.
I would say definitely being able to support an advocacy for the best students ever.
Absolutely. I think regardless of what role we play, it's always keeping in mind that everything we do is for the benefit of our students, and ensuring that the services that we provide, the help that we provide, the wraparound services that we provide are all of what's in the best interest of the students that we serve daily.
Beautiful answers. And thank you from the bottom of my heart as a parent as well. That was my last question. I know we have one comment for you that was posted on Facebook, and I want to go ahead and get to that before we wrap up and go to our last. Do we have that comment? Go to our last panel, which is with Mr. Threadgill. Okay, there's a okay, we've already seen that comment and you've already addressed it. That's okay. Thank you so much. I saw something from Twyla, I believe Twyla Barnes posted a comment, and I wanted to make sure to run that past all three of you if I could while I had you on screen. If not, if I can get a yay or a nay, I'll keep it moving. If not, let's see here. Okay, there we go. Twyla Burns. Thank you. Oh, she posted on YouTube. She says, so many adults fail to realize that there are so many variables that affect a child's mood. And she's referring to Mr. Graves, Commander Graves from the last panel, provided awesome insight. So Twyla, thank you for your feedback. Thank you for your comment. And our three awesome ladies on this panel, they're going to stick around. They're going to disappear, but they're going to stick around. It's the beauty of technology. As we continue with our conversation, we're going to take a 60-second break, a commercial break, and then we're going to be back with Mr. Threadgill.
My uncle, Freddie Lee Tyson, was a part of the syphilis study. He was such a wonderful man, a very loving, very caring, very jovial person. He helped build the air base at Moulton Field. When you think about the Tuskegee Airmen, all of the greatness that they did, and then in this same space, such an atrocious study was being heaped upon our men, that really shook my spirit. They were not being treated. That is very different from what's happening with COVID-19. The vaccine is being made available to anyone who wants it, even those who find themselves at the space of hesitancy. We have to have patience and give them the requisite information that they need, that they can make an informed decision. But let's do it out of love.
Your home. The deadline to apply is April 1st. It's coming up April 1st, 11:59 p.m. We're going to talk more about that, but we have a quick video and we'll be back with Mr. Threadgill.
Living in that state where everyone around you is headed toward the dead end.
To the young men in particular in his community, Broderick's story says that there's hope. Broderick's story says that there's opportunity, and that all you need to do is reach out and grab it. Through his work with the Collegiate 100, through his work with the Student Government Association as a member of our first year council, Broderick has made an impact not only on his life, but is continuing to make an impact on the campus.
Receiving the Tyus Wilson Scholarship when I graduated high school was a very big moment for me. I didn't have to worry about the financial pressures of college. I had more time to focus on my studies, had more time to be an involved student. I had more time to just build a great network around me and find and seek out people that had my best interests at heart. So, and I'm truly thankful for the scholarship. Didn't have to worry about anything. So now that I've graduated with my master's degree, I have a better sense of myself. It's still something that's kind of surreal to be able to come from my background and have an advanced degree now. The biggest transformation from being a high school student to now, making sure that I pass on the knowledge that I've gained to someone else. And I think those experiences help me shape my philosophy on learning and mentorship and things of that nature. So I wouldn't be where I am today without the support of 100 Black men.
It's testimonies like that as to why we do what we do and what the 100 Black Men of Greater Mobile continue to do oh so well. Once again, thank you for joining us for continuing the conversation on the impact of COVID on education. We've had this conversation, unfortunately, for more than a year. Fortunately, though, we have the best panel that arms you with their expertise, their resources, their knowledge to keep you and your family safe and ahead of the curve when it comes to information. This evening, we've had two great panels. We've talked from a medical standpoint and from the education standpoint. And we're continuing to remind you that you can ask a question. You can post your question. If you're watching on Facebook, post it there, or on YouTube, on as the older people say, the YouTube. You can post it there, and I will ask our panel for you. So our panel, if you've been listening, we have met Katrina Kien, Dr. Krista Meharry, Dr. Monica Motley, Dr. Carrie McDade Hancock, Ms. Patrice Davis, and Commander Curtis Graves. We talked about law enforcement. We've talked about both sides of the bay, what the needs are, and we're bringing it back here to Mobile County. Mr. Threadgill, he is a superintendent of the Mobile County Public School System. He joins us this evening. Mr. Threadgill, good evening.
Good evening. How's everyone doing?
We are doing fantastic. We have been having a robust conversation this evening, and we want you to get in on the conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, for those who don't know me, I am Crussell Threadgill, Superintendent of Mobile County Public Schools, and it is my honor to be able to join you all for the town hall meeting. I would first like to give a big thanks to the 100 Black men for extending this invitation. Events like this show that you are living up to your true mission, which is giving back to the community what the community has given to you. So a big special thanks for you all. And I also want to give a special thanks to all of the listeners for joining us tonight, for having a vested interest in public education and the community. So I think they wanted you all to know a little bit about me. And of course, if you don't know, I was born and raised right here in Mobile, Alabama, where I am a proud graduate of the John L. LaFleur. After attending high school, I attended Troy University, which was Troy State at that time, where I received my bachelor's degree. I later attended Alabama State University and received my master's in educational leadership. I also received my superintendent's certification at the University of Alabama, and I also have received my Texas superintendent certification from Lamar University. I began my educational career as a teacher, a coach, and assistant principal in Greenville, Alabama. I then transitioned to Troy City Schools, where I was the principal and assistant superintendent. I also was the superintendent of Elba City Schools for 5 years. And throughout my career, I just knew eventually I wanted to return home to serve the community where I was born and raised. Therefore, I returned home as chief of staff before being appointed as superintendent, and I'm completing my 4th year as superintendent here in Mobile County Public Schools. I'm married to LaTanya Threadgill, who's also an educator, and together we have 3 beautiful children, Sydney, Alex, and Coleman. So, Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm loving this because, not many people get to talk to Mr. Threadgill, the superintendent.
Absolutely.
And hear your foundation. I like the way you emphasize the, Rattlers.
John L. I understand. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
We're staying neutral this evening, but it's a pleasure to have you here. And, and you're very humble because you have been awarded with quite an award based on what a great job you are doing to those who have the ability to vote yay or nay. Which award was that?
I guess Superintendent of the Year, maybe?
Yes. That's a pretty big deal.
State of Alabama? Yes. Yes, ma'am.
You come from a long line of educators.
Yes, ma'am.
So you've always known that this is what you wanted to do, that you wanted to impact many families, many children?
Yes, from a young age, I grew up with educators. My aunt was an educator. My grandmother was an educator. My grandfather was an educator. I have aunts and uncles that's in the field of education. And so I tried very hard to veer off to something else, but education kept pulling me in. So it's just a natural fit. I really do genuinely care about kids. So it was just a natural fit.
Mhm. Bring us into your world, please, because some people really don't know what a superintendent does, number one. And number two, help us understand the size of your school district in comparison to the rest of the school districts in the state of Alabama.
Yeah, so Mobile County Public Schools is the largest and the oldest school district in the state of Alabama. We have around 53,000 students. The second largest school district is about 20,000 students less than what we have. We also have around 8,000 employees. And, I'm in charge of all of it. So we have approximately 90 schools. We have 54 elementary schools. We have 21 middle schools. We have 12 traditional high schools. We have 3 specialty schools, which were our 2 career tech schools and 1 special needs school. So ultimately, I am responsible for everything that goes on in the day-to-day operation.
So this pandemic has shown us our strengths and it's shown us our weaknesses. If you would please talk about both. With having the largest and oldest school district here, how did you navigate through this pandemic, which and as I've said all evening, we're still very much in the pandemic. What were your best practices during this pandemic?
Well, first of all, our world was turned upside down when the governor announced March 2020 that all schools would be closed due to COVID. And essentially, it was only supposed to be for two weeks. Well, weeks turned into months, months turned into years. And so we had to quickly reinvent education. We had to ensure that learning still took place even with school being closed for a long period of time. So I'm gonna be honest with you, it was a scramble in the beginning, but through collaboration and communication, just to give you an idea,
Mm-hmm.
when the kids went home, we thought they were coming back the next day. So school was shut down. So we had to figure out how to provide education to the kids distantly. So, we had to figure out how to get 53,000 devices. We had to figure out about connectivity. We came up with the idea to have the TV stations. We had 2 channels to air lessons from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually received national attention for that effort. We also had to figure out how to feed our kids because that was very important for us. As you heard earlier, we had to make sure that they received breakfast and lunch. And we actually served over a million meals throughout the pandemic. So it was very difficult in the beginning, but I have a great team, great board, great community, great parents, and we all pulled together and we made it happen.
And it's always so important for others to understand from the outside because it's very easy to think woulda, coulda, shoulda when it comes to something of this magnitude. But until you're in your shoes, literally and figuratively, can you not understand all the different angles that you're having to deal with and how you have to pivot? And I think that's very interesting that you said each day the children went home. You were thinking they were coming back the next day.
Right. Yeah, it was a challenge. And I think COVID to me exposed managers versus leaders. I think in the beginning, the people who thought they were leaders, they really found out that they were managers. And getting through COVID, you had to lead. And so, that's what we had to do. We had to step up and we had to lead.
We have teachers that are watching right now, and parents and grandparents. There is a teacher shortage nationwide, yes, but specifically in such a large school district because of the response to COVID. Speak to that and how you are supporting the teachers that are who stayed the course, who remain on the front lines. What do you want them to know?
Well, first of all, I think pre-COVID, I commend the administrators and the teachers that stayed, because they could have easily, when COVID first hit and they saw that we had to reinvent education and it was this virtual setting, they could have took off and retired then. But they stayed the course. So I am so proud of those teachers that stuck in, because it was the kids that they were staying there for. So I am so proud of those administrators, those teachers that stayed the course, and not saying that we're through COVID, but they stuck in there for a couple of years. Now, at this point, you're seeing a lot of administrators and teachers now retiring. Some of them wanted to retire a couple of years ago, but they stayed the course. So right now, we have a lot of teachers and administrators retiring. So we have this in the summer, we're preparing for this huge teacher fair. And we're not only going to recruit some of the best teachers in Alabama, we're going to Mississippi and Florida and Georgia. And now that the teaching certification laws have changed in Alabama, it's easier now that if you have a teaching certificate in Florida or Georgia or Mississippi, Alabama will grant you a teaching certification. And before, it was not that easy. We also, it's a little easier now if you are a retired teacher and you want to come back to teach. It's a little easier now. So all of the retired teachers that are listening to me tonight, please, if you would like to come back and teach, the process is very, very simple.
You, Mr. Threadgill, you said a teacher fair is coming up. Do you have a date, a time, location?
Well, right now we're in the process of getting all that worked out. Dr. Motley, who was on earlier, she's in charge of that, but it will be at the convention center, and I'm not sure of the date. I think we got to get through testing first. We're trying to get through testing, so let us get testing first, but it will be after testing.
And and Ms. Ken, Mrs. Ken talked about how you communicate with families on issues like this through your website and through the Facebook page and social media. Let's talk about that, because I know when we spoke before, you told me something interesting in our panel, something very interesting about it's almost like mini districts when it comes to information dissemination. And so let's talk at the high school level. There's some people will say, hey, my high school said that school's canceled because of weather. And another high school may say, well, we never got that word. Bring me into that world when it comes to it being like mini districts, if you will.
Yeah, so the way I explained it before is because we have 53,000 students, it's almost like we have anywhere from 6 to 8 districts inside of one. We have different communities that believe different things and have different values. So whenever there's a universal decision to be made, it automatically upsets some of those community members. But communicating, to my parents and to the schools is very difficult because I have the media that's trying to get the information, and I'm the type that I would not want the media to be the first source of information. I want to be that first source, that primary source of information. and then the media. But there's always different levels that I have to communicate on. I have my executive staff, I have my principals, I have my board members, and then I have all the faculty and staff, and then I have my parents. So to get all of that out in those layers sometimes becomes very challenging. So because some people may get it before others. So I try to go in a certain pecking order to make sure that everybody is getting the communication as they need it, in order they need the information in. So it does get a little difficult at times.
But that helps to understand the process,
Correct.
because I don't know many parents who have been able to know that. And so hearing it directly from you will help, because there will be another situation, whether it's weather or unfortunately the pandemic, because we know a new variant has surfaced and been reported of the Omicron. So it's good to know how the communication flows. So I posted that you were coming on and have some questions for you. Here's one. Sure. Children have suffered so much as a result of this pandemic. How are our children at this point in time when it comes to their mental health and their academics?
Yes, great question. One of our most difficult challenge is learning loss. I mean, bottom line, that's you know, the huge challenge that we have. We already had that challenge because when they come to us in kindergarten, some of them already have an academic gap. So when the pandemic hit, that gap just widened. And so special ed is a whole nother monster. It was very difficult to make sure that we provided that individualized education plan virtually. So special ed students suffered as well. So those were our biggest challenges facing the pandemic. And then there was that social and emotional loss. And I'll share with you in a second some things that we're trying to do to offset some of those challenges. But we also saw some equity issues that came about. We all knew that there was some equity issues throughout the system, whether that's here or in the state or nationally. But the pandemic brought out other equity issues that we didn't realize. So all of those things that we're working on, we're constantly working on. Some of those challenges we still have to this day, but we know them and we're working at them.
Thank you, Mr. Threadgill. Appreciate that answer. We've talked about what you're doing to attract more teachers. Maybe they were retired or new teachers. What are you doing to make sure the teachers who did stay, that they feel appreciated?
Yeah, so we have great teachers. I know for a fact that the teachers are getting a raise. We're getting a 4% raise. And what people don't realize is that the system does not have to give everyone that raise, but we give the raise, our system give the raise across the board. And to give you an idea of how much that costs for us is every percentage that we get a raise, it takes $1 million out of our budget. So for an example, our 4% raise, that's gonna cost us $4 million. But to me, it's worth it because our teachers do a great job. We also provided them with a bonus. I believe it was last year, a $1,200 bonus. And we would like to do something like that in the future. So because our teachers go above and beyond, and I just truly appreciate everything they do, not for me, but for the students.
I know what you mean. I have such appreciation for teachers, especially those who have families to go home to. So you're taking care of everybody else's kids, and now you got to take care of your own. My goodness. Okay, here's a question for you. This is from a parent who says, I'm concerned about too much activity in the high school bathrooms. Vaping, marijuana smoking. I know teachers are limited, but I am concerned and I feel that COVID may be contributing to this. So this is something else that teachers are having to deal with on top of trying to teach.
Right. Let me quickly, because I'm sure that there's going to be many questions involving the school level issues. So let me just run through real quick, if you will allow me, the chain of command, if there are any issues, because there's going to be several issues that go on in the school level. But if you have a concern that's going on in the school, once you talk to the teacher and there's no resolve, that's when you go to an administrator, whether that's an assistant principal or a principal. If that doesn't work, you need to ask them who the supervisor of that school, and it's normally an assistant superintendent, and you reach out to them and set up a meeting with them. And if they can't resolve it, we have a deputy of academics. If it's an academic issue or a concern, you would meet with them. And we have a deputy of operation. If it's a facility issue, you will meet with them. If that doesn't work, then you set up a meeting with me and I will see if I can get that problem solved. Now, if you have an issue with me, depending on your district, there's a board member that you can contact to see if you can get that taken care of.
That's so helpful to understand, because I think, if you're a parent and something's going on with your kid or another kid, obviously emotions sometimes speak louder at that moment, and you want to get feedback or give feedback to the nearest person. And sometimes all they know is Mr. Threadgill, but now we know the chain of command.
Right.
Okay, Jillian L. Bowers back for 3. This is her third question or statement, and we love her tremendously. Here's what she has to say. As superintendent, will you please address how transitioning to 7 periods a day for high school will counter some of the learning loss that has taken place due to COVID-19?
Sure. Excellent question, Jillian. So let me just give you a quick historically, when blocks were first introduced, I think it was back in 1998, the whole purpose, the primary reason for blocks was for athletics. They wanted all the athletes to be in one block, which was 4th block. So the whole beginning of blocks had nothing to do with academics. It was about athletics. So the problem with blocks, I have several problems with the block, but the main problem with the block is when it was time for the kids to take the ACT. Let's say it was math. Mm-hmm. There were students that haven't seen a math class in a whole semester and sometimes a whole year. So it was very difficult for them to do well on that test if they haven't had any math classes in a whole semester or possibly a year. Historically now, all your high performing schools, high schools, did away with block years ago. And to be honest with you, I'm just going to be perfectly honest. We've been on block since 1998. It's just not working. It's not working for our students. Now I know everybody is not going to agree with that, but I'm about the students and what's right for the students. And I feel I've researched, I've had conversations, investigated everything that I possibly can to know that this is the best option for students. So basically, even though we're calling it modified periods, you can call it a modified block if you want to, but basically what it is instead of having 4 classes first semester and having 4 classes second semester, you're just going to combine those 8 classes and have an A schedule and a B schedule and rotate every day so you can have that class throughout the year. Now, there will still be some semester classes to butt up against, the other semester class.
Mm-hmm.
But this way, it will allow the material for the kids to have it the whole year. And, the 96 minutes, we have great teachers and we have some teachers that struggle. And when you have 96 minutes, we may have some teachers that teach 30 minutes and then give homework for the next 30, 40 minutes. And we have some students that attention wise cannot handle 96 minutes. So there's many reasons why we switch back to modified blocks, modified periods, however you want to word it. But I do think it's going to be the best thing for students.
So 96 minutes when it came to the block schedule. So the new, the modified way, how long will these periods be?
It's just cutting it in half.
Oh, wow. That's a huge difference.
Yes.
Allows the kids and the teachers to stretch their legs,
Right. Well,
break up the monotony.
I think if I'm not mistaken, I think traditional middle schools, their periods are like 52 minutes, maybe 52, 55 minutes. So, middle school's been teaching 7 to 8 periods the whole time. So those 8th graders going into the 9th grade, they won't really see a difference.
What are you hoping comes out of this newly modified schedule? 1, and 2, when does it go into effect?
It will begin in the fall. And what I would like to see is our students to retain their information better, to help us help them on the ACT scores. Because I personally think that the blocks scheduling has hurt our ACT scores. So that's one outcome I hope changes very quickly, because we've struggled with those scores.
If you have just joined us or you've been listening, that's Mr. Threadgill. We're talking more about the Mobile County Public School System. We're finding out ways in which the school system can be better for the students and for the families. And we also want to know how we can be better and get more funding to continue to do things like this. We've got a survey that we're going to ask you to complete and give us your feedback and let us know, because this funding then helps us do what we're doing, which is giving you access and providing a platform to our leaders in the community from an educational standpoint, from a medical standpoint. We can continue these conversations, made possible by the Healthcare 2.0 grant from the National Institutes of Health and the Morehouse School of Medicine, and of course, the 100 Black Men of Greater Mobile. Mr. Threadgill, education's a big deal in your family, as you talked about, and of course, from a job standpoint, we've got a great scholarship that that's being offered right now. Deadline's coming up April 1st. You alluded to how great the 100 Black Men of Greater Mobile, how great of an organization they are. Would you encourage our young people and parents to get in on this scholarship opportunity?
Absolutely. I think it's a huge opportunity, not only for the students, but for the families. I don't think they understand how much college tuition is. So it is for the 100 Black men to provide such an opportunity for our students and our family is huge for this community. I don't know of many organizations that provide this opportunity to so many of not only students, but our students. So please, please, please take advantage of this scholarship opportunity.
I'm so thankful that you impressed upon them the importance of that. Dr. Motley mentioned earlier in the other panel about a hotline that was available for parents to give their feedback. Besides social media, or is social media the very best way that they can let you know, good, bad, or indifferent, how things are going at their respective schools?
Yes, ma'am. Social media, of course, we have Twitter. But I do want to mention, and I think I heard Dr. Motley and Ms. Ken mention our website, which is www.mcpss.com. And if you go to parents frequently asked questions, there's a ton of resources on that link. You can go to Schoology to see your kids' grades. There's a homework hotline. That's mental health, the Alter Point. You have, if you think your child is using drugs or on alcohol, the Drug Education Council is a great resource. That's on there. We have a suicide prevention hotline. I think that was mentioned. And we also have a mental health number that you all can call. So it's a bunch of information that parents need to go on and just start reading and just getting that information.
What do you recommend our parents and our families do to bridge the gap, especially as we approach summer? And, we talked about the food insecurity. We talk about some trauma that may be happening around them. And a lot of kids like to come to school to escape all that. Any best practices you want to offer, not just as Mr. Threadgill, but as a dad yourself to families that are listening?
Yeah, so I have 3 kids myself, and my wife was involved in that too.
Right.
But I'm gonna stay away from, like you said, the superintendent side of it, and I want to speak as a parent. Just sitting your kids down and just having conversations with them. I think if we would all just put the phones down, turn the TVs off, and just simply have conversations with your kids, you can learn so much information from just talking and listening. I learned so much from just listening to my kids. I learned what they're struggling with, what they're good at, when they need a pat on the back, when they need a slap in the back of the head. So just sitting down and having those thoughtful, intentional conversations with your kids, I think that's key. I think that's the most important thing, to have that relationship with your kids and forget the outside world and just concentrate on them.
And sometimes that's easier said than done, because we're trying to hurry up and get to the next thing, get to the next sporting events, or get to the next, piano recital. And we mean well, but stopping and looking and listening and hearing our children, it's a difference maker. You have a bit of experience in it. I think that's sage advice. Okay, here's another one for you, Mr. Threadgill. The arts. I understand that teaching units are based on the number of students enrolled at a school, and when numbers are smaller, the administrators have to make a decision over a core subject as opposed to an elective. Has there been any consideration given to not basing an elective like art to not be based on enrollment? We're not all technically minded, and we can disadvantage students who may go the way of the arts if the decision is based on enrollment. In other words, can an elective like art be protected?
Yeah, so great question. Years ago, for some strange reason, whenever there's a financial strain or a loss of enrollment, the first thing they want to take, or we want to take, are the electives, which is art, music. But I have a different way of thinking. I think we have to have those things, because it just can't be core. There has to be some balance. And to be honest with you, and I know you all don't know this, but some of the schools that has lost enrollment or don't have the enrollment, I personally, my finance department, we issue them units. So I can think of a school right now that we allowed 13 units just at that school to make sure that they have those electives. And we're talking about millions and millions of dollars. So I'm an advocate for having those electives and those that art and that music, because I think we need to start thinking about the total child and educating the total child. So I'm a big advocate for that.
Mr. Threadgill, now you know I'm a journalist, so I'm going to ask the follow-up question. You said
Sure.
a school. Which school?
Well, for one, I can name several. We have Scarborough, we have Booker T. Most of the inner city schools that's losing enrollment, we have to provide what we call local units to make sure that they have those extracurricular activities. And I will tell you this, I know somebody's saying, well, I haven't seen, art here or music there. It's very difficult. We have a hard time finding teachers to teach those courses. So hopefully when we have the big teacher fair, we're going to target some of those elective teachers to teach some of those classes, because we have the unit sitting there. We just struggle in trying to find the teacher to teach the class.
That makes perfect sense. And as we wrap up, Mr. Threadgill, in a few words, tell me the best part of your job.
Interacting with students. Bottom line.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking our questions. Thank you. Monique Grayson Robinson says, thank you, Mr. Threadgill. We've been watching on Facebook. Jillian L. Bauer says, thank you, Superintendent Threadgill, for your leadership. Our friends have been watching on YouTube. They've been posting questions. We so appreciate your time and all that you're doing and for bringing us into your world. That was very interesting. I had no idea block schedules were really based on athletics and not academics.
Yep.
Go figure. That's why you have to ask the superintendent. He'll tell you.
That's right.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. We appreciate you. Don't forget to take that survey. The scholarship that we've mentioned, we've posted that link. The deadline's April 1st, 11:59. Do want to thank all of our panelists, Dr. Carey, Dr. Krista, Commander Curtis, Miss Patrice, Miss Katrina, Dr. Monica, Mr. Threadgill, of course, Yvonne Matthews, for all that she's doing behind the scenes. Andre Green, Dr. Andre Green, thank you for all that you do, of course. And Reverend Mr. Marlon Jones, thank you for making sure that technically we had things going on. It was a robust conversation. We went overboard a little bit, but we had a lot of good information. If you have further questions, follow up on all those links that we've posted. And again, go to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I thank you for allowing me to host and moderate this meeting, the impact of COVID on education. And once again, want to thank all of our sponsors, 100mobile.org, that's a website, Morehouse School of Medicine, NCRN, and of course, you for tuning in. Have a great evening, stay blessed, and continue to go to the educated sources for all the resources when it comes to COVID. Have a great night.